Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of Campus Close-Up. Today we have the honour and the privilege of being joined by Georgi Sheaf. Georgi, hello.
Hi, good to be here.
Really good to see you. Among other things, Georgi has led students globally for Alpha and also set up the Women in Leadership Network in London. She's just got loads of amazing wisdom and insights around leadership, and that's what we're going to be chatting about today. So Georgi, first up, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your leadership journey?
Yeah, so when I was about 16, 17, I felt God call me to lead. I didn't know what that meant or looked like. And I went to Bible college where I studied leadership for 5 years. Wow. And that's a lot of information.
That's
and
a lot of years studying.
That's a lot of studying. And but actually, like, that was a great foundation and a great base. But actually, it wasn't until I had to lead a team, have a vision in mind that we were trying to achieve, and the rubber hit the road, that I actually learned to lead.
I think for me, when I think about leadership, one of the biggest obstacles is this whole idea of fear of failure. And particularly, I don't know what you think about this, but particularly in the UK, we have this sort of tendency to low-key kind of not putting ourselves out there. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, do you have any thoughts on what it looks like for leaders to really stand out? Yeah,
I feel like that's a bit of a thing for me, of seeing churches play it safe or Christians playing it safe, and there's something in me that just has a real passion of, like, there's so much more. Like, if we just go for it, if we just go all in, we'll see God do so much more. And I think I really experienced that when we started the Women Leadership Network, because it was me really stepping out and starting something, because it was a little bit not controversial, but maybe some people were like, oh, okay, talk to me about this, talk to me about what you think. Yeah, it's a thing. And I think through doing that, the first 6 months, we received some criticism and questioning, and some people being like, kind of like, who do you think you are, actually? And it was in those moments that I really learned that I knew God had called us to do this. And so I just had to take a risk and step out and go, I've just got to be all in, and I've just got to trust that I heard you and that you'll take care of the rest. And I really believe that, like, if God has called you to do something, sometimes you have to back yourself before other people back you.
So thinking about universities and where leadership and student mission kind of cross over and intersect, why is it such a big deal that we raise up leaders on campus?
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely believe that we're not going to see God do what he could do on campus unless we raise up leaders. Like, I honestly feel like it's not a peripheral thing. I think it's front and center, and I think there's so much shifting in church around people realizing they're not the leaders of tomorrow. They're not the emerging. They are the leaders. And if we give them a part to play, they will step into that. And so I think there's something to be said for, and leadership being influence, leadership being taking ownership and responsibility, and the young people on their campus saying, this is my campus, and so I take ownership for this, and I'm going to do something. And through God's power and through him giving me the courage, we can see something amazing happen. But that for me is leadership, and I feel like we have an opportunity as those who are raising them up to say, you know, I take you seriously, and I'm going to give you something, and I'm going to trust you with something precious, and I know that you will come through. I know that with God in you, you can do amazing things. And then we, like I was saying before, we have to coach them and support them and be by their side. But actually, I think them stepping into their leadership and into their influence is the kind of linchpin of seeing God do something amazing. And I think if we are bystanders, or we don't take risks, or we hope that God does something, we're not going to see it happen. So for me, it's like a real passion in my heart of actually, let's find the boldness to lead and to influence, and see what God does off the back of it.
Yeah, and I think with students, a lot of time we look at leadership and see it as a particular role or a particular function, a particular opportunity, and which is great, and we want to see loads of that. But I wonder, how do you think students can start to grow as leaders outside of those formed spaces?
I think probably one of the biggest things for me when I was younger, the way I invested, I didn't realise I was doing it, but now looking back, I invested in my leadership, was hanging out with great people, get some really great people around you. Who do you admire? Like, go and approach them and say, would you give me an hour of your time? I'll buy you coffee if I can pick your brains. And I had some incredible mentors. Looking back, I realised how amazing they were from when I was about 14, 15, and just used to meet up with them and, you know, talk about everything that was going on, boys, whatever. And actually getting those people around you to start shaping you and teaching you, that's something you can do right now. And I think in the same way, you know, they always say leaders are learners. And like, you know, there's so much good content out there, like podcasts and books, like feed yourself, like grow and learn more about God and his ways and how he acts on the earth and what amazing things he's doing, and get inspired. And then, yeah, I guess ask God, like he's always up to something and there's so much need. And I think if you press in and say, God, use me, he's usually just looking for available people. Yeah. And he'll show you what you can do, even if it's, you know, helping out homeless people or, you know, being on campus and just finding that one person that always sits by themselves or always seems like not really connecting or everyone else is avoiding. Yeah. Or even, you know, talking to your classmates about, you know, how they're doing and actually being someone who'll journey with them in the tough stuff. And yeah, there's always an opportunity now. And I think, you know, something like Alpha, like, you know, if your church is running this big Alpha, then it's all set up for you, but you can also run it with your friends in your home, like, it's so simple. But also, like, start the conversation, start the journey, like, just show a genuine interest in people, and I think the rest tends to come. But yeah, I think a teachable spirit and a sense of openness and willingness to do something for God is usually all it takes, I think, and he'll use you and make you a great...
Yeah, and I think it all just comes back to this whole idea of responsibility, which is actually a massive theme when it comes to going off to university. You know, like, students are very much in control of their own time, like have to get themselves out of bed, get to lectures, all that kind of stuff. And I think when it comes to mission, we can very easily just fall into the trap of being like, well, what's my church doing? Like someone else needs to program this out for me. But I think if we're going to see a move of God on campus, we're going to need leaders for that, and we're going to need leaders who are proactive.
Yeah, and I think one thing I've really been challenged about recently is I think a lot of us in the church are often like, oh, you know, we should be doing this, or we should have a homeless ministry, or we should have an Alpha course, or we should have, you know, an outreach, or whatever. And actually, it's always putting the onus back on, like, the leader or the pastor. Yeah. And it's like, you are the church. We are the church. You know, when did it become that, you know, the people up front, you know, are the church and we're bystanders? And I think taking responsibility, you know, go back to Acts 1-7 and read through the early church. You know, they just went about their everyday life preaching the gospel, and with signs and with wonders, and actually they were the church, and it wasn't institutionalized and it wasn't set up, it was just raw and organic. And I think it's going back to that and remembering, like, I am you know, a member of the church, and actually I can do something significant right now. So rather than sitting back and critiquing or making suggestions, just do it, you know, apologize rather than ask for permission. I think just go for it. And I think you'll see God use you, and your church will probably turn around and go, oh, we should get on board with what you're doing. That's really exciting. Yeah. So, yeah, just make it count, you know, do something right now.
Yeah, I think when we ask students to lead in this campus context, we're quite often asking them to go against the grain, like go against the prevailing winds of culture. And, you know, universities are often a very open place, very tolerant places, but also can be quite hostile if actually you're, you know, part of an opinion that isn't very welcome. And so I wonder what you would say to a student who, you know, who feels that sense of responsibility, feels that kind of passion to lead, but is just worried about coming against the current, coming against what is going on around them in their university culture.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can ever get around that. You know, I think we actually have it so easy in this country. And you know, I was talking to my housemate the other day about what's going on in North Korea and in places in the Middle East, and we have it so easy. And I think a scripture that really encourages me is from Acts, and it's when the early church, it's Peter and Simon are building the church, and they're coming against persecution from the authorities and from the priests, and they're feeling their first real sense of persecution and real sense of, okay, this is creating fear in us, this is scary, they've put us in prison and they're against us. And I love it. There's just like 3 lines. I think it's in Acts 4, and it says that they kind of met with the priests and heard what they had to say, and then they got together in one room and they prayed and they asked the Spirit to come, and the Spirit came, and the place in which they were shook, and they were filled with boldness and were sent out. And I just think we can't remove the obstacles. We can't remove any sense of persecution or any sense of rejection. We can't really deal with that. But what we can deal with is whether we're coming back to God and saying, fill me with courage. Like there's no getting around it. You need courage. And it is scary. But actually, God has all we need. And if we come to him, he will fill us with his Spirit and equip us and give us boldness and courage. And I love that, like, right at the beginning, that's our example of people going, this is scary. But God met them and was faithful to give them all they need, and look at all the things that they did. And yeah, so I would say get people around you, get praying, keep coming back to God and saying, again, need you to give me courage. This is terrifying. And yeah, and it will be scary. But once you start seeing some of the fruit of it, you'll be like, it's so worth it. So yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, one last question. You're sat down with a student, they're just about to head off to university. You can tell them one thing. What would it be?
Yeah, I've had a few of those conversations with all the freshers starting up. But I think I would say there's that scripture, Psalm 92 or 93, where it says, blessed are those who are planted in the house of the Lord, for they will flourish in the courts of our God. Wow. And actually, if you want to flourish, if you want these 3 years to be years of flourishing, then be planted. And, don't wait a year to find a church. Don't, put one foot in, one foot out, see what happens. Make the call early doors. I'm going to be planted. And I think you will find yourself flourishing. So find that church. There's so many great opportunities to find great, like Fusion, Link Up. There's so many great churches in some of the major cities. Like, pick one and be planted, and get involved. And make the most of it. Like we were talking about, like, decide that this is going to be a season of taking risks and making bold choices. And never again will they probably be living in community in that way. I mean, living amongst so many non-Christians where they see your day-to-day life, they see the ins and outs, and rather than that making us scared, actually, like, that's such an opportunity.
That's
and so just be bold and go for it and get planted and get support and get great people around you. And yeah, that's what the local church is there for, so make the most of it.
Yeah. Well, Georgie, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And we'll leave a conversation there, but don't forget you can check out previous episodes with Sean Bowles and Hannah Heather over on our website, along with loads of other great content. We'll see you guys very soon.